Thank you to everyone who's joining us on Facebook right now. I'm Ashley Gadiano. I'm the Director of External Affairs at the Connecticut Institute for Refugees and Immigrants. I'm also joined by my colleague Leonela Cruz, the Director of CIRI's Project Rescue. If you all have questions or comments during this, feel free to type them in the chat box on Facebook, and to the extent that Leonela and I see them, we will certainly respond during this, but we'll definitely respond afterwards to any comments that are left there. And then we'll also archive this on our Facebook page and on our website at cirict.org. So jumping in, as many of you may know, January is Anti-Slavery and Human Trafficking Prevention Month. There's certainly a lot we could cover on the issue of human trafficking, but for today, we're going to focus on human trafficking here in Connecticut. Later this month, on January 22nd at 12:15, we'll do another Facebook Live where we dive specifically into labor trafficking with Leonela and two of our attorneys. So for today, we're going to talk about human trafficking, the landscape of human trafficking in Connecticut and even New England, what CIRI's Project Rescue does, and how you can help. So now we'll turn it over to Leonela, who will give us a brief overview of human trafficking.
All right, thank you, Ashley. So as Ashley mentioned, my name is Leonela Cruz, and I am the Director of Project Rescue. That is our anti-human trafficking program, as well as unaccompanied minors. So I think, as most people know, human trafficking can often be thought of as modern-day slavery. And we say modern-day slavery because it's not the way you would categorize slavery as it was many years ago, where you would see chains or people tied up. And if that were to actually happen, right, it wouldn't be something that would be visible, right, out on the street that you would see in the community right away. But when we're looking at human trafficking, we're really looking at that definition of force, fraud, or coercion. So as we get cases referred, we're trying to see, is this person being forced to do anything? Is there fraud? Are they being coerced to perform some type of activity or labor, right? And when we look at human trafficking, it's divided in there's two separate types of trafficking. So we have sex trafficking and labor trafficking. Although they can often happen to victims, they can both be a victim of sex trafficking and labor trafficking. So it really could affect anyone in the community. And I think, I've been doing this work for quite some time. And when we first started many years ago, we thought that this was like more of an issue that affected the foreign born. Obviously, fast forward to present, there was a lot of work done, a lot of research, and our numbers indicated that this is something that doesn't just affect the foreign born. It really is affecting everyone in the community, from adults to children, and it really could affect anyone from any type of background. So definitely, as we're talking about these things, it's really important to remember that it could happen in a city, it could happen in a suburb community, any type of situation. And the trafficking victims could be men or women of all nationalities. So of course, it's an issue that affects the foreign born, but it's also affecting domestic victims here in the United States as well. As you may know, right, there's more than 40 million victims that are caught in this modern day slavery. And it includes many children, people that are forced in marriages and situations. And I think statistics for this is really difficult, right? Because there could be, the calls or referrals that are made when we identify victims of human trafficking, but there are many victims that are in the situation. And again, because it's not visible, it's not something that we can see, that we can say, oh, that person's tied up or this person's locked in this home. Because it's something that we cannot see right away, it's really difficult to get those accurate figures. But again, we're looking for force, fraud, or coercion when we're talking about human trafficking.
So I'm going to stop you there because that was a lot to kind of take apart and look at. Right. You said 40 million people are in forced labor, sexual exploitation, domestic servitude, right? Mm-hmm. That's a massive number. And, we know that that's about $150 billion industry. So the scale outside of Connecticut, right, worldwide is obviously quite immense. And then you spoke about two different types of human trafficking. There's the sex trafficking, which I think is the type of trafficking that more people know about. It certainly is the type of trafficking that the federal government talks mostly about, and labor trafficking. But I would imagine they're both, if not equal, they're both huge concerns. Is that accurate?
Definitely. And Ashley, it's something that I think, as a state, we've done an amazing job when we talk about sex trafficking. Many of the partners that we work very closely with have raised awareness, have developed curriculum and training in order to get that information out into the community. So that has been a huge movement that everyone has taken a part of. And through that, we've been able to identify more victims of sex trafficking. That being said, I think there needs to be more awareness on labor trafficking and how that may look, and how it can often be confused, right? People may think, oh, it might just be like a really bad job, but that could also be trafficking when we begin asking the questions. So I think, taking these opportunities to be able to talk to the community about what labor trafficking is, how that may look, and raising awareness on that specific part of trafficking is essential. Specifically, we are at an agency where we work a lot with the foreign-born community, with immigrants. We work with our unaccompanied children that are coming into the state. So just making sure that people are aware, what is labor trafficking? What does it look like? It could be, in a farm setting. It could be in a home. It could be in a restaurant. It could look so many ways. So I think, when we go into that second Facebook Live that we'll have, I think we'll have more of an opportunity to really talk about labor trafficking, but definitely something that, as we're discussing with different partner agencies and as a program, it's something that we want to definitely highlight and continue highlighting, because it's such an important part for people to know that it's not just sex trafficking, it is labor trafficking as well. And oftentimes it could also be both, right? Both sex and labor trafficking.
Absolutely. And just for some perspective here, some numbers I had pulled were, the Department of Defense estimates that about 5 million people worldwide are victims of sex trafficking, whereas about 21 million people worldwide are victims of labor trafficking. So we're talking a 4-to-1 ratio. Are we seeing that play out in Connecticut as well? Do we see more cases of labor trafficking than sex trafficking, or is that something that, is really going unnoticed, unreported, and uncounted right now?
I think it depends like who we're specifically talking about, right? What partner agency we're talking about. When we're talking about, CIRI Project Rescue as a program, we work very closely with our immigration program, and our immigration staff, they're accredited to, they've been trained to be able to screen victims when they come in and ask questions, right? So there could be some concern that the client may have, and our staff is trained to be able to screen them and, see the red flags, see if they're eligible for any form of relief. So when we're talking about CIRI specifically, we have a strong immigration program. We also have a number of other programs that clients may come in. And generally, the clients that are identified there would be victims of labor trafficking. They've either come in because they're in a work situation that just there's some things going wrong. Something may have happened on their journey into the United States and they're seeking immigration relief, those type of things. That being said, when we're looking at numbers, throughout the state, we're talking about children or youth. The majority of cases that we've seen identified have been sex trafficking. So it really depends on what we're looking at, what numbers we're looking at. I would say for CIRI Project Rescue, we see a good number of labor trafficking cases, if not labor and sex trafficking. When we're talking about our children and youth, it's primarily sex trafficking.
Okay. And then, just to break apart two other things. One, I think it's really important to note, and we'll get into exactly what CIRI's Project Rescue is, but it's important to note that this happens to foreign-born individuals, which I think is often where, again, our minds go when we think about human trafficking. But it also happens to domestic-born individuals. And I'm not sure that everybody fully grasps the reality of that situation, and that we serve both, and we work with agencies throughout Connecticut that serve both.
Definitely, definitely. And it's really important to highlight both, right? Because I think as a program we work with both. Oftentimes people think, oh, just foreign born. No, but we work with both. And cases look so different, right? When we're looking at the foreign born and the domestic victims. That being said, the needs are very unique, and we as a team we hope to address those needs and be able to answer the questions that they may have. But really important to understand, right? When we're looking at the domestic cases, this may present itself in many ways, and they may present needs that are going to be very different from what the foreign born needs may be. So definitely something important to keep in mind when we're talking about trafficking, where it is different populations, but they've been trafficked, and they have needs that could often take years to address.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've kind of skirted around CIRI's Project Rescue. Let's dive a little into that, and then I'm sure we'll come up with more from there. So, talk to me and the folks out there listening a little bit about Project Rescue specifically, how it started, what you've been doing, and kind of where it's going.
Yeah. So this is really exciting for me to talk about because I've been with the program for quite some time. It's a federally funded program. And when I first came into the agency many years ago, I won't say how many, but many years ago, we were just working with the foreign born. And I've been able to be a part and witness how that transition has been made from working with just foreign born to now serving everyone. And very proud to say that we are able to work with everyone in the state of Connecticut, again, federally funded to work with domestic foreign born men, women, adults, and minors. I will take a moment to say that a lot of this work, right? An immense amount of work that takes place. This wouldn't be able to happen without the collaboration that we have working with other agencies throughout the state of Connecticut. As I've mentioned already numerous times, victims can present a number of needs when we first meet with them. So making sure that we have that collaboration with others is essential. In Project Rescue, I think one of the neat things that we have that I think is super helpful when we're working with the foreign born community is that we can provide social services, but we can also provide immigration legal aid. And we are able to follow the case from that identification when we begin working on immigration relief to the very end. And I will say, an exciting moment a few months ago was when one of the attorneys was able to finally say, my client is applying for citizenship. This was a client that we first identified many years ago. And now to say my client is finally a citizen, it's this immense feeling of just happiness, gratitude, and just so proud of everything that the client, has been able to overcome during their time, right? Because again, it's something where it's not just a few months. It often takes many years for clients to work through things.
Right.
That
And
being,
are those, I'm going to ask you a quick question.
yeah.
Are the people who receive both CIRI's Project Rescue and Immigration Legal Services, are they coming in identified as a trafficking victim and then being placed with our attorneys to work through their legal needs? Or are they coming in through our legal services and being identified as a victim or a survivor of trafficking? How is
Both.
that flowing?
Both actually, because so oftentimes they could come in through our immigration program and be identified there, and then they begin receiving services once they're referred into the program. But then we could also get a referral through the trafficking hotline, through partner agencies, someone in the community, and at that point, then we would refer over to an attorney or myself so we can screen the person and see if they are in fact eligible for services. Through Project Rescue. If they're not, but have been a victim of some other crime, we try to find a program where we are able to place them, if that is possible, within CIRI.
Perfect. And just so folks know, again, on our website, CIRICT.org, are all of our programs. We serve refugees who are being resettled here. We work with survivors of human trafficking, as Leonela has said, and we also have a fairly robust immigration legal services department that works statewide, just like Project Rescue does, and serves thousands of clients a year through that program.
Right. Yeah, and I guess
So
Ashley,
I apologize. Go ahead.
yeah,
Keep
no,
going with
and
where you're
I'll
at.
go ahead and I'll highlight very quickly. We also have our unaccompanied minors program, and the reason that I want to bring that program up specifically is because it's been a partnership that we've worked with very closely with an agency in Chicago. And I like to highlight it specifically this month because many of the children that we work with, these are unaccompanied children that have identified a sponsor in the state of Connecticut. They are released in the state of Connecticut, but many of these children that we are working with have either been a victim of human trafficking or are at very high risk of being trafficked. So when we're talking about raising awareness about trafficking, about labor trafficking, about sex trafficking, this is definitely a population that we want to talk about, just because they may not have access to the resources that other people may have access to, and they may also not have that support that other clients may have.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. I would say backtrack for a second. People think unaccompanied minors, I think they go mentally to the border. They think
Right.
about children being taken from parents, maybe parents are sent back. How are unaccompanied minors ending up here in Connecticut?
Yeah. So again, this could be a whole nother session.
And maybe
Because
we'll do
there's
that in
yeah,
February.
I think it'd be really interesting to talk about, because it's something that Project Rescue as a team has been doing for quite some time. But very quickly, these are children that are picked up at the border, and generally they don't have a parent or sponsor with them, and they're placed in one of the shelters. Once they're placed there, they go through, they have a physical done, they begin their immigration process, and they begin to look for a sponsor. And that sponsor could be a parent, it could be a relative, it could be a family friend, where they could reunite that minor with that sponsor. So when children are coming into the state of Connecticut, and I will say we're not seeing every child that comes into the state of Connecticut, we're
Right.
contracted to only see a certain number. But when we do get that referral for that child coming in, generally it's because there is some concern that maybe the sponsor minor may not know how to access resources, may not know how to find an attorney. There may be some concerns about mental health, those type of things. And we work with them for a very short period, about 90 days, which isn't nearly enough for the amount of needs that are presented.
Imagine.
It's so important that we can at least work with them for those 90 days because, as I mentioned, Ashley, through working with these children 90 days, we have identified children and even sponsors that have been victims of human trafficking, or that have been at
Yep.
very high risk of being trafficked. So being able to safety plan and work with them to ensure that they are in a safe place, before we're able to fully close out the case.
Wonderful. So we're getting lots of comments about how great a discussion this is, and I think we should take the unaccompanied minor portion of this and table it, and we'll do something
Yeah.
maybe early February or mid-February that we'll publicize on Facebook and on our website and our email list. But let's take the next 12 minutes. Let's circle back to a question I had, which is what are you and the team at CIRI seeing as the greatest needs for survivors of human trafficking? What are the areas of support that are either missing because they're not, resources aren't as available as they should be, or because the demand is so high for those services?
Yeah. So, again, we are a federally funded program, and I think we are very fortunate to have that funding to be able to provide support to our clients. That being said, we work with clients typically for about a year. And I would say, I think now more than ever, with everything going on in our nation, in our world, we have seen just an uptick in the need for mental health services.
Yeah.
And I bring that up because, there could be multiple providers, but oftentimes we need a provider that really understands where the client is coming from, their country, maybe their language, finding that interpreter that is able to really interpret and say what the client is feeling. And, when you work with victims of human trafficking, it's not just mental health when they're first taken out of the situation, but this is something that could, where they may need that support throughout the years, right? There may be something that years down the road could trigger and make them think about their trafficking situation, and they would need that mental health support. So this is something where we've seen clients that we've worked with in the past come back and say, where can I find a mental health provider that's able to assist me and help process these things? When we're talking specifically about the foreign born community, as they're applying for immigration relief, they don't have insurance, and they may not have the funds to cover that mental health. So if we don't, if we have already worked with them, or let's say they don't know of our program, then they may not be able to cover that mental health. So that is definitely
Right.
one of the needs that we often see, along with obviously the financial support, specifically now more than ever, with just like paying rent and those type of things, which obviously as a program and as an agency, we're trying our very best to provide that support to everyone that we can, that our clients specifically, but it often comes up.
Absolutely. And, mental health we hear and are seeing a lot, I think, in the nonprofit space generally, that now more than ever with the pandemic, for our clients, especially foreign born, with the assaults on immigration out of Washington, we know that that is a huge issue. And when it comes to food, we, thanks to a partnership with Grace Farms, are able to provide weekly or biweekly deliveries of food to clients in need, and through a partnership with the State Department of Housing, are able to help with rent to the extent possible. So, I know that our teams are always working to collaborate with other agencies and the state and federal government on those sorts of things.
Definitely.
Two things. Is human trafficking cyclical? So when we get somebody out of trafficking, when you and your team are able to identify and work with, are we able to keep them out?
The hope is to be able to keep them out. Does it always happen? No. And we've seen this a number of times happen with the clients that we're working with. I think specifically about this case that we worked with a few years ago, and it was a domestic victim. And, we would remove her from the situation, right? It was a request that she would make to us and help her, but then she would always be pulled back, either because she felt some form of commitment to the trafficker.
Yeah.
Maybe she wasn't. I feel like a lot of what happened in that case was just like that connection, her friends being with the trafficker, and she didn't really have that familial support. But there have also been other other victims that have stated that oftentimes, there's just not enough money, and this may be a way where they can make money, help support their family. There's a number of reasons, right? And I think as a program, we try to provide as much support, obviously safety planning, to ensure that, to try so that they don't go back.
Yeah.
But it's something where it really depends on the client, on the victim. And if that trafficker is still around, they, actually, it's something where they have worked so hard to get that person into the situation where they
Right.
manipulate them, where it's really hard to get that person back, to not depend on the client. You talk about that dependency, and we see it a lot with like our youth cases, where they almost depend on that trafficker, and there's this form of, I put it in quotes, but love, right, that they feel for this trafficker, but oftentimes it's the only thing that they've known. So it's really hard to remove themselves from that situation, or to just like choose, they choose to go back oftentimes.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So we have 7 minutes. This went by way too quickly. We can again do follow-ups to this, but I want to turn quickly to what can people do, because we're getting some questions on that. And I know that whenever we're out doing this, that's always the question. So we know awareness around human trafficking, especially as you spoke about earlier, knowing that labor trafficking exists, that it's not just sex trafficking, knowing that this happens to children and adults. I think one of the things you said earlier, that this plays out across gender lines. We often think that this is an issue that affects women.
Right.
It affects men. So lots of pieces of this conversation help to, plant the seeds of that awareness. But what else can people do? What are the big things people should look for, et cetera?
Actually, I think one of the things, COVID has been really difficult for everyone, but I will say one of the things that has come out that I think has been really helpful for our agency and for agencies across the state is that we are connecting now more than ever. And we are having these
Yeah.
conversations, whether it be through Zoom, through Facebook, whatever it is. But having these conversations has been essential. And I encourage people to have these conversations. And I think, as a team, we're willing to have those conversations and either facilitate the conversations and begin this talk. But I think allowing each other to be able to ask those tough questions. Is this happening in my community? Why is this happening in Connecticut? What are some of the sectors where we're seeing trafficking present itself is really important. Having that knowledge. I think if we work together as a community to be able to identify and to be able to say, trafficking is not going to happen in this city, it's not going to happen in this state. You scare those traffickers, you scare those networks because they know that there is a community that is knowledgeable. We have the resources to help. We have law enforcement on our side to assist and help these clients. But I think obviously just keeping informed, knowing what the trafficking hotline number is, knowing that if there is a victim, they not only can they call that number, which Ashley just put up, but they can also text. That's a newer research. Sorry, a
A
newer
tool, right? A new tool that
tool.
they can
Thank
use.
you.
Yeah.
A newer tool that they can do because they realize sometimes victims can't call. So texting might be easier, but having that knowledge and knowing who the partner agencies are, but also providing that support to the partner agencies. So Ashley, you mentioned, Grace Farms and providing that support for food, right? And delivering food to our clients. That is essential. That is something where, yes, we have federal funding to assist, but what other things can we provide support to our clients, especially during these difficult times? So being able to assist the agencies so the agencies are able to assist the clients as well.
Yeah, and we do trainings, kind of across the board, right? We've worked
Yes.
with law enforcement, we work with for-profit, not-for-profit, etc. So, if people are listening or interested, how can they reach out to request that we either train their organization, their employees? I'd also note we've done this in schools before. What's the best way for them to get in touch?
So I would say the easiest way would be to call our office number, but also my email. I think
Okay.
my email would be the easiest, and that's lcruz@cirict.org. But then obviously our main office number, the 203-336-0141. And again, we've gotten all types of requests specifically now where some people just want to have a conversation or a quick training. We recently did one at the schools where we know teachers are pretty busy right now, and they only had about 15 minutes, and we were able to chat a bit about what trafficking is and allow people to ask questions. So if there is a need, please feel free to reach out to the information that Ashley has put up.
Wonderful. And I'm just going to quickly go through comments. So yes, this is being saved. I will upload it to our website within the next 24 hours. Sarah asked about social businesses that we can support. Sarah, we'll get back to you on that one. I'll post a reply after Leonela and I speak all the offline. Terrell says, it's my understanding that Connecticut service plazas and hotel and motel workers have been educated about signs of sex trafficking. How has this worked? Do you want to address that quickly?
So, I think as partner agencies, we work with, sorry, Ashley, can you still see me?
I can still see you.
Sorry. Okay. So, we work closely with the Trafficking in Persons Council along with a number of organizations. And one of the things that Quinnipiac Law School, I don't like mentioning names because if I forget one, but I know that there were a number of agencies working together to train hotels, motels on what trafficking is. So being able to provide that training and even giving just that opportunity to go out and train has been useful. That being said, is it the final solution to identify all victims of human trafficking? No, I think there's a lot more work that needs to be done, specifically, again, because a lot of that focus is the sex trafficking. How do we identify labor trafficking? Because a lot of labor trafficking cases do come out of the hotel industries. So how are we able to better train staff and continue what we've already built? How do we build on that to make it better?
Wonderful. Marjorie asked if I could repeat the email. I just put it in the comments of the Facebook live stream. And so now we are pretty much at time. So just a few housekeeping items. Again, we're hosting a second Facebook Live that will dive specifically into labor trafficking with Leonela and two of our attorneys, called Seeking Justice in Labor Trafficking. That'll be on January 22nd at 12:15. And again, that'll be live on Facebook and uploaded to our website after the fact. If you're interested in learning more about our work, you can visit our website, or you can email info@cirict.org. Again, I'll put those in the chat as well. People who are interested in volunteering, we're obviously living in a COVID world, so volunteer opportunities look different now than they did before. But I would say go to our website or email that info@cirict.org, and we'll get you queued up in our volunteer list and connected with our volunteer coordinator. People who are interested, this is federally supported, but not all of our work is. For example, immigration fees are high. Immigration legal services require a lot of man-woman power and bandwidth. So if you're interested in supporting us, you can obviously donate, cirict.org/donate. But get involved, sign up for our email list, follow us on social media. We're active on all of those channels. And just thank you to everybody who tuned in today. Thank you, Leonela, for joining me. And I look forward to doing this again in 2 weeks.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, everybody, have a great day. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday, and we'll talk soon.
Bye.
Bye.